Over the past several days, the battlefield in eastern Ukraine has taken another sharp turn, as Russia fails to capture Pokrovsk and instead escalates a wave of disinformation, repeating false claims of victories that simply do not match reality on the ground. Ukrainian commanders report that as of December 3rd, fighting in the northern part of Pokrovsk remains intense but firmly under Ukrainian control, despite Russian attempts to claim the town since December 1st. At the same time, Ukraine has carried out a series of long-range strikes, hitting Russian oil depots in the Tambov and Oryol regions and destroying reconnaissance drones, including expensive Orion UAVs, in Crimea. Meanwhile, Russia has carved out a small zone of control between Vovchansk and Kupiansk, though without major breakthroughs. And across the entire front line, the scale of combat remains staggering. 201 engagements recorded on December 2nd, with Russian daily losses again surpassing 1,200 personnel. In today's analysis, we will break down these developments clearly and calmly, what is happening, why it matters, and how these events fit into the broader strategic picture of the war. Let's begin. The situation around Pokrovsk in early December has become a striking example of how the war in Ukraine is now fought on two fronts, one on the battlefield and another in the information space. As reports from the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces and the General Staff made clear on December 3rd, Russian troops have become stalled in brutal urban fighting. Their attempts to seize the northern part of the town, particularly the areas along the railway line, have not succeeded. Ukrainian defenders, despite facing heavy pressure, have held their positions and even managed to rotate several units over the course of the week, something that would be impossible if the town had truly fallen. This is where the Russian narrative sharply diverges from observable facts. On December 1st, Vladimir Putin was briefed at a Russian command post and told that Pokrovsk and Vovchansk had allegedly been captured. Yet within 2 days, Ukraine's General Staff publicly contradicted this claim, explaining that Ukrainian forces remain in control of the northern sector of Pokrovsk and continue active operations to eliminate Russian assault units. The contrast between Russia's statements and the situation reported by Ukrainian officers is too large to overlook. What we see is a deliberate effort by Moscow to compensate for stalled offensives with exaggerated or fabricated declarations of success. In truth, the Russian army remains bogged down. According to the Ukrainian 7th Corps, their forces are trying to advance through densely built-up neighborhoods while also pushing toward key logistical routes. But even in these areas, Ukrainian units report that the rate at which the enemy is being eliminated is higher than the rate of its movement. This dry military phrasing essentially means that for every small push Russia attempts, it loses more manpower and equipment than it gains in territory. For older audiences following this war, it may feel reminiscent of past conflicts where governments tried to portray momentum through announcements rather than results. It is a pattern that now appears once again. Despite the challenging situation, Ukraine has kept logistics functioning in the Pokrovsk-Myrnorad area. Commanders confirmed on December 2nd to 3rd that additional supply routes are being expanded. The fact that rotations can still be performed, supplies can still arrive, and Ukrainian forces can maintain defensive lines under constant attack strongly suggests that Russian claims of a total breakthrough are unfounded. Meanwhile, the information war has intensified. Not only did Russian channels falsely claim the fall of Pokrovsk, but similar disinformation appeared regarding linemen in the Donetsk region, claims that Ukraine's Third Army Corps quickly debunked. Even the well-known German outlet Bild briefly published a report suggesting Pokrovsk had been completely captured, only for the General Staff to immediately refute it. This reveals just how rapidly false narratives can spread when one side aggressively pushes them, and how important verified information remains in wartime. The broader front line reflects the same pattern. On December 2nd, Ukraine recorded an extraordinary 201 combat engagements across different sectors, with the Pokrovsk direction seeing the heaviest fighting. Russian forces also tried to expand pressure in the Kharkiv region. As Viktor Trihabov from the Joint Forces Grouping reported, Russian units have created a small zone of control between Vovchansk and Kupiansk, specifically in the Velikiy Berlik direction. However, calling this a breakthrough would be misleading. It is a shallow, border-adjacent foothold rather than a major advance, and the Ukrainian side reports no significant activity in the neighboring northern Slobozansky sector. Politically, these developments tell us something significant about Russia's current strategy. When real advances slow down or fail, disinformation becomes a tool to maintain the illusion of progress for domestic audiences. From a political commentary perspective, one might say that this approach reflects both internal pressure within the Kremlin and the need to project confidence during a costly, protracted war. But illusions cannot substitute for territorial control, and the events of early December make that clear. At the same time, Ukraine has shown that it is not merely defending, it is striking strategic targets far beyond the front line to degrade Russia's warfighting capacity. These operations, covered in detail in Part 2, show that while Russia tries to win headlines with false claims, Ukraine is focusing on real damage to military infrastructure. As December unfolds, the picture in Pokrovsk is clearer than Russian narratives suggest. The town has not fallen, the fighting remains intense but balanced, and Ukrainian defenders continue to hold. The real battle for Pokrovsk is ongoing, but the battle for the truth appears even more contested. While Russia relies increasingly on inflated narratives to compensate for stalled offensives, Ukraine has taken a markedly different approach in the first days of December, weakening Russia's war machine where it hurts most: fuel, drones, offshore surveillance systems, and high-value military assets deep inside Russian territory. The General Staff reports released on December 3 provide a clear window into how Ukraine is reshaping the battlefield through long-range precision strikes. Late on the night of December 3, Ukrainian forces successfully struck the Dmitrievsky oil depot in the Tambov region of Russia. This facility is not just a civilian fuel center, it supports logistics for Russian forces occupying Ukrainian territory. After the strike, several fuel storage tanks were reported burning, a disruption that directly affects Russia's ability to maintain consistent supply routes for mechanized units. For viewers who may not follow every technical detail of the war, oil depots serve as the arteries of any modern army. Without constant fuel, tanks, APCs, artillery logistics vehicles, and even generators simply cannot operate. These Ukrainian strikes are not symbolic gestures, they are designed to reduce Russia's offensive potential over time. Additional strikes hit another critical site, a Russian technical observation post on the MSP-4 offshore platform in the Black Sea. According to preliminary information from the General Staff, the UAV crew station there was destroyed, and the surface environment radar on the Savash semi-submersible drilling rig was damaged. This matters for two reasons. First, Russia has used offshore platforms for surveillance and early warning, helping detect Ukrainian drones and maritime assets. Second, disabling these systems forces Russia to stretch its remaining monitoring capabilities over larger areas, creating gaps that Ukraine can exploit. It is a methodical reduction of Russia's situational awareness, something far more strategically important than most short-term frontline movements. Ukraine has also continued targeting high-value drone systems. During the strike on the Saki airfield in Crimea on November 27, Ukrainian forces destroyed 3 Orion reconnaissance strike drones. Each Orion drone costs around $5 million, making this loss both militarily and financially damaging. For Russia, which already struggles with high-tech UAV production due to sanctions and limited access to advanced components, losing 3 such systems in a single operation is a serious setback. On December 2, Ukraine confirmed another successful strike, this time on the Livny oil depot in Russia's Oryol region, where 2 RV-5000 fuel storage tanks were set ablaze by attack UAVs. Again, these are not random targets. They form part of the logistical chain that sustains Russian operations near the border and inside occupied territory. Ukraine is sending a clear message. While Russia pushes propaganda about capturing towns it has not taken, Ukraine is degrading Russia's ability to wage war at the structural level. And the losses for Russia are not limited to infrastructure. According to Ukrainian reports, Russia has now lost approximately 1,176,230 military personnel since the full-scale invasion began. Just in the past day, meaning the period leading up to December 3rd, Russian forces lost 1,200 soldiers, along with 6 tanks, 3 armored vehicles, 12 artillery systems, 3 multiple launch rocket systems, 90 tactical level drones, 47 vehicles, and 1 unit of specialized military equipment. Even without accepting any single number as absolute, the trend is unmistakable. Russia is paying a staggering cost for marginal gains. From a political and strategic perspective, these losses matter far beyond the battlefield. Wars are not only fought by armies but supported by economies, societies, and political systems. When losses pile up faster than victories, governments increasingly rely on narrative management, precisely what we have seen in Russia's claims about Pokrovsk, Vovchansk, and even fictional breakthroughs near Lyman. In my personal assessment, this pattern signals a growing imbalance between Russia's political needs and its military realities. Moscow must project momentum to maintain domestic support, yet the Ukrainian strikes and the grinding attrition on the front undermine the image of control that the Kremlin tries to cultivate. Meanwhile, on the front line, the pressure remains intense. With 201 combat engagements recorded on December 2nd, the Pokrovsk direction continues to be the focal point of Russian assaults. Yet Ukrainian commanders emphasize that logistics, while difficult, are still functioning. Additional supply routes toward Pokrovsk and Myrnarad are being organized, ensuring steady reinforcement despite Russian attempts to interdict roads and corridors. This reinforces a point that military analysts often stress: a defensive line does not collapse merely because it is attacked, it collapses when a defender can no longer sustain itself. The fact that Ukraine is still rotating units and resupplying them speaks volumes. Equally important is the situation in the Kharkiv region, where Russia has created a small zone of control between Vovchansk and Kupiansk, specifically in the Velikiy-Berlik direction. While this foothold is not insignificant, Ukrainian officials highlight that no major breakthroughs have occurred, and Russian activity in the neighboring northern Slobozansky area remains minimal. This suggests that Russia's attempt to stretch Ukrainian forces across multiple fronts has not yet produced the decisive impact Moscow hoped for. Ultimately, when one compares the two sides' actions in these early December days, a clear contrast emerges. Russia expends enormous manpower for slow, grinding assaults and compensates for stalled progress with disinformation. Ukraine, meanwhile, focuses on strategic strikes that disrupt fuel supply, surveillance, and high-tech weapon systems, actions that weaken Russia's entire military apparatus. In my view, these developments reveal a deeper long-term trend. While Russia seeks symbolic victories to shape perception, Ukraine seeks structural advantages that shape reality. As the winter campaign unfolds, the consequences of these differing strategies will become clearer. But for now, the events of December 1st to 3rd show a Ukraine that is not only resisting but actively undermining Russia's ability to continue the war. Even as Russia attempts to win a propaganda war, it cannot translate into territorial control.